Hi, it's the Lipstick Gal. Thank you so much for watching today. I wanted to talk about eyeshadow palettes. And I have been finally getting back into wearing eyeshadow on a more regular basis. For a lot of 2020, I didn't. And I saw a tag recently of favorite eyeshadow palette from each brand. And I was like, that would be fun to talk about. So I thought we'd do that for today. Thank you for watching and thank you for being subscribed. I kind of went and I took inventory and here's what I realized. First of all, there are some brands that I have a ton of things from, and there are some that trombone, I have one. So I thought we would split it up into here are the favorites from the ones that I have, and then small, medium, and large size palettes that I only have one from each of these brands individually, which are my favorites. I have 5 Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes. I used to have, I think, at least one more, but I might have decluttered. But my favorite of all the ones that I have, this was hard because I really had some strong feelings. Like, should it be the one that I enjoy using the most? Should it be the one that I use the most? Or should it be the one that inspires me the most? And all 3 of those are different palettes. But I will tell you, the one that I use and inspires me a lot is this one. The Sultry palette, sadly, is a limited edition palette, but I'm gonna tip the brush out. I love it because it has some beautiful metallics and neutrals in here, and you've got a nice mix of mattes and shimmers, and it leans mostly on the cool side. It's not like 100% cool because you do have some warmth over here. You've got a little bit of warmth in here, but there's a lot of cooler tones in here, and I get such a beautiful, glamorous, easy eye from this palette. I love this one. I wish it wasn't limited edition. I only have 2 Pat McGrath palettes. I have like one large mothership palette, the one with the green, and then I have one of these smaller palettes. I don't even think she still sells these anymore, but this is the one that I use the most and the one that I feel like was worth my money the most. This is the Mothership Sublime Bronze Ambition. It looks like this. You just fold up the mirror here. And I think a lot of the reason that I get the most use out of this is because I've got some really nice warm shades. You're gonna see a lot of warm neutrals, a lot of neutrals, just because that's the sort of makeup wearer I am. That's a little boring, but it's true. But I thought that even though the other one had those special finishes in them, it's a larger palette, it has more options, I just don't reach for it. This one is more of an everyday palette for me, and the other one feels more special occasion. And I know it shouldn't be. I paid $125 for it. I should just use it whenever, but I just never seem to reach for it. Out of the 2, this is the one I reach for the most. I realize it's been a hot minute since I picked up an Urban Decay palette. I still have the original Naked. I have the Naked 3. I have some limited edition ones, and the one that I still use and you can't get because it was a collab and it was limited edition is this one right here. This is the Kristen Leanne Daydream palette. This is the palette that made me fall in love with matte shades. I have always loved a sparkly, shimmery, metallic eye. I remember there was a time in the 90s when I had like 2 metallics from Lancome, and those were the only 2 shades I ever wore. It was metallic on metallic, and I lived. But this is the palette here that made me realize there could be really good mattes out there that would look really good on me and not make me feel like I was wearing boring makeup. Now, another reason that I specifically loved this is because these shades are the perfect light, medium, and deep shades for my skin tone. I feel like I couldn't have picked better neutrals had I created my own palette out of singles at Urban Decay myself. I have not been intrigued by a lot of the new releases like the Naked Honey, the Naked Wild West, the Naked Cherry, the Naked Heat. Like, there's a lot of other palettes that have different color stories to them that just don't call to me. But I still reach for this, but I don't use it here because wouldn't it be terrible to be like, I love this palette, but you can't get it. But I still use this very regularly. I realized as I was going through my collection, like Urban Decay, there is another brand that I haven't purchased from in a long time, and that is Too Faced. I have 11 Too Faced palettes. I've decluttered quite a few. There are others that are on my list of maybe after looking at all of this and seeing all the higgledy-piggledy I have in my drawers, maybe it's time to do like a deep clean and get rid of what I'm really not using. I'm not using the chocolate bar. I'm not using the semi-sweet. I already decluttered the bonbon years ago. Like there's a lot of things that, like the metal packaging from Too Faced, although it's super cutesy, I just don't use those palettes. Not even the Sweet Peach, even though the color story there is a little bit more my speed. I have other formulas that I like better. But there is one palette from Too Faced that I actually love and I keep right here on my beauty table in my beauty space so it's easy reach. And I picked it up last year in the beginning of 2020 and it's this. This is the Natural Nudes. And the reason I love this is because for a nude eyeshadow lover, this has mattes, it has shimmers, it has really beautiful, like I love this palette. I used this palette in conjunction with something else the other day just because I needed some, you know, darker brown shades and the other palette didn't have it. I'm like, I know exactly who has that. I really like this palette. But what I don't like about Too Faced is I feel like there's a lot of inconsistency. Like some of their smaller 8-pan tin palettes are good and some of them are not good. And I feel like when you, I just feel like instead of being always like good, 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 I've had enough where there's been misses where the formulation is different, where, you know, the color story is not inspiring. There has been so much. I used to buy a lot of Too Faced. I just don't anymore. And there hasn't been anything since this was released more than a year ago that has really caught my attention and made me go, there's been a lot of absolutely not. But I love this palette a lot. I don't have a ton of Viseart, and I feel like a lot of it is because in my mind, I think of Viseart as a very expensive brand. I started out with 2 of their 12-pan palettes. Each of those are $80, so it's like, it's a huge investment. One is an all matte palette, one is an all shimmer palette, and I thought if I had an all matte and I had an all shimmer, I could do some really pretty looks, but I find that I just don't reach for them. I also have their Grande Pro 3, which is kind of like a rainbow palette of mattes. Another one that I don't reach for, but when they came out this fall with their Pedophore collection, and they're both like, I have 2 of them. They're both right here. But this is the one, this is the Lila's palette. This is the one that I wasn't sure I was going to love, but I live for this palette. I use this a lot. What's interesting about this palette is that although the metallics I think would work on any skin tone, I feel like the lighter matte shades, like that soft gray and that kind of lilac-y, I don't know, dusty pink, is not gonna work on everyone. I feel like after, you know, kind of light medium skin tone, they're just gonna get lost on the eye, or they're gonna make your skin look chalky or ashy. I feel like because these 2 metallics are just so gorgeous, like it's almost worth it just for these guys. They're so pretty. I use this palette a lot. I sometimes will just tap on like a metallic just over the eye, you throw on a little mascara and be done. Sometimes I use all 4 shades. Sometimes I'll use this in conjunction with something else. This is definitely my most used Viseart palette. I do like the other one. The other one I have is the Praline. And I was having a hard time deciding, but I have so many warmish neutrals, you know, champagnes and kind of bronzy shades, that there's something special about this cool toned palette that really keeps me coming back. And a lot of times, because I have so much makeup and so much eyeshadow, and especially since these are small, it'd be really easy for these to kind of get lost in my collection. They haven't. They've been pride of place, front and center, but the Lila's palette, beautiful. When I started digging through my collection, I realized I only have 2 Natasha Denona palettes. I did have 2 others that I decluttered. I had one, was it the Aries palette? It was like a holiday palette like 4 or 5 years ago, and that came in a Beautylish Lucky bag, and it was just not for me, and the formulation was different than what I had been expecting. And I did have, I had a mini at one point, and I just, it wasn't like, it didn't do it for me. And I was kind of started getting gun shy. But my favorite palette, the one that I use the most, is the one that I've had the longest. It's even in the old packaging. I mean, look at this. They don't even make this packaging anymore. but this is from their eyeshadow palette 5. So they have a whole bunch of these palettes with 5 shades. This is the number 2, but I live for this shade right here. This is gorgeous. Like, all of the metallics in here are just ridiculously gorgeous. There's 5 metallics and they're still beautiful. And I've had this, I don't even know how long I've had it. The one matte in here in the middle is beautiful. It blends beautifully. And it's these other shades that really made me fall in love and want to try more. This I think is $48, $49. You can still get this color story in the 5 pan. It'd just be in an updated palette. It wouldn't be in this old packaging. But I am not getting rid of this because this is one that I actually use quite a lot. I do have the Metropolis palette. That's fun, but sometimes I get overwhelmed because there's 28 shades in there. And it's like, that's a lot. What do I do? And I end up getting a muddy look because I use too many shades. I prefer palettes with fewer numbers of pans. It just makes it easier and I get a more cohesive, focused look. But this is one of my favorite formulas, the guys that are in here. Mwah, beautiful. If we're talking Sydney Grace palettes, I have 7 and I have an entire Z palette full of singles, like 24, well, more than that, but I have one full one and then I have like 4 in another section. But let me tell you, out of all 7 of those palettes and my whole palette full of singles, I had to decide which Sydney Grace palette is not just my favorite, because I feel like every Sydney Grace palette that I have, all 7 of them, I like them more than the Urban Decay stuff, than the Too Faced stuff, than the Pat McGrath stuff, than a lot of the other things in my collection. They're some of my most reached for palettes. And I will tell you, it was the decision not just of which one inspires me the most, you know, which one is the most used, which one, you know, it came down to which one do I use the most. And the one that I use the most is the Enduring Love palette. This debuted in January of 2020, and it is a much cooler color story. You've got some silvers, you've got some purples and grays, you've got some blues. There is a little bit of warmth with this kind of peachy shade right here. If you were to be up close and personal with my palette, you would realize that I use like the shades kind of in the middle that are more your neutral lighter shades, because they're not that light on my skin tone. They show up a little bit more pigmented than they look in the pan, and I love that. I have used everything in here. And if I want a punchy, bright, you know, colorful blue or purple eye, I love the tones in here. If I'm looking for something like a little grungy and olivey, I love this. If I want kind of like a ethereal, shimmery silver, you know, I go for this. There are some gorgeous shades in here, but this is the palette that confirmed my love for Sydney Grace. Was not like a, oh, well, this palette was good, this one's not. It didn't pull a Too Faced on me. It didn't pull an Urban Decay where sometimes the formula is good and sometimes the formula is not. It's always good, it's always consistent, and it's amazing. And the other thing that's great is that this palette comes, this is the Lite palette, so they'll have the exact same color story, but then the transition shades like these guys here in the middle will be different in the deep palette, so that people of multiple skin tones can wear this palette but choose a color story that works better for them. Like the color story is the same, but they can choose a palette where the transition shades or what you would use in your crease aren't going to make them look ashy or chalky. I love that so much. But this is my favorite Sydney Grace, and it was really hard to choose. It was like trying to choose a favorite kid. So out of all of my Charlotte Tilbury, I have 5 Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadow palettes. My favorite one is this one. This is the Icon palette. This was a holiday release, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. It's been a while. It's been a while. But what I love about this is that they go color stories in columns of 3. These 3, these 3, these 3. Of course, you can cherry pick and do whatever you want. But my favorite thing about this is that there's something about Charlotte's formula where the shimmers never make my 46-year-old eyes look, they don't look, the makeup doesn't look cheap, the makeup wears really well, but it also has a soft, subtle luxe look to the eye, and I feel like her metallics are magical. They're really good, really, really, really good. And I feel like, because this one I think was $65 when it came out, you're getting more bang for your buck. You're getting 12 shades. You're getting a ton more product per ounce in here than you are in the quads. The quads are 53. I have 2 quads that I don't use that much. It's $106 of eyeshadow that I somehow can't seem to let go of, and I'm also not using. I feel like if you're gonna find, like you're gonna go and you're gonna look at all of them and you're gonna decide this is the one that I would use the most, I think it's worth the $53 because the formula is beautiful. The mattes are good, the satins are good, the metallics and the like top coats are good. It's a good formula, but I wouldn't just like pick any random shade. Oh, this one looks fun, because sometimes buyer's remorse sets in. I have not had buyer's remorse with this, and I feel like the formula is so good. It really was worth my $65. I know all of our holiday palettes have recently been $75 less, maybe 2 or 3 years, but I love this one. So drugstore has really been impressing me. And I have really liked the e.l.f. bite-size eyeshadows. My favorite one, I have 3. I've had Hot Jalapeno, which is the green. I have Rosewater, which is kind of like that rosy, you know, dusky color. But my favorite is Pumpkin Pie. I did not know how good these were. Rosewater was the first one I got. Then I got Hot Jalapeno because I heard it was really good. But this is the one that not only suits my color story interest, it's warm and it's neutral and it's got some really good shimmers in it. I love the fact that it's small and that it's petite and compact, that you have a limited number of shades so that I can't go crazy. I do like these bite-sized eyeshadows. I feel like they're so good, but Pumpkin Pie is my fave. I have 7 eyeshadow palettes that I still have from the Balm. The Balm is another one of those brands that I feel has kind of fallen off the radar. They haven't put out anything that's really caught my attention. They haven't really done anything. I used to love the Balm. I got introduced to the Balm through Emily Noel, and my first palette, In the Balm of Your Hand, their rock and roll palette, I just loved. I still have it. I don't use it because it's really old and it's probably not like good to be using it, but I'll tell you, I cannot let it go because I have so many good emotional happy memories wearing that palette, watching Emily and other people do reviews and looks with that palette. I still have it for those reasons. But the one that I still use and that I still like, and I think you can still get, is this one. This is the Meet Matchmaker. And the reason that I like this, I love the Meet Matte line because most of them, like the Meet Matador, Meet Matte Nude, there's like a Meet, what's the wedding one? Anyway, there's a ton of them and they're all 12 matte shades. And I had fallen in love with mattes from Urban Decay and that Kristen Leanne palette that I showed you earlier. So I started buying mattes from the Balm, like entire matte, and they're really good. This one's my favorite because not only do you get a matte, you get a coordinating metallic. Now you can use just these 2 together or you can pick anything you want and make a look. I so many times will use them in groups of 2. I need an easy, fast eye look, this one, this one, this one. And you can definitely do more, but I love this palette for that. I also like that it's a smaller palette. It has a nice mirror in here. I like it. This is the one that I reach for the most out of all of my Balm palettes, but I'm not reaching for a lot of Balm these days. And that kind of makes me a little bit sad because they used to be one of my favorite brands. Surprisingly, I realized I still had 5 lorac palettes. I haven't reached for lorac in a long time. There were some palettes that came out in late 2020, like holiday and maybe before, that made me kind of go, But out of all of them, I have a lot of the Grande Pros. What I still actually think is my fave, and the one that I still use occasionally, is just the original, the Lorac Pro. The reason that I love this is because as somebody who loves a natural, easy eye, I feel like all I need to do is like, ta-da! Because you've got darker colors, you've got lighter colors, you've got mattes, you've got shimmers, you've got cool, you've got warm. Yeah. And this is not one of those where you're going to be getting like a colorful, like a blue or a green or a purple. You're getting very, I mean, this is the deep purple over here. It's more burgundy eggplant. But I mean, you definitely can get some interesting looks out of this, but this is not the most exciting. But this is a workhorse of a palette, and I still really appreciate the Lorac formula. I used to have a lot more Juvia's Place palettes. I decluttered the ones I wasn't using. I'm down to only having 3, and my favorite out of all of them is this one. This is the Nubian 3, the Coral palette. And I like it because you've got a mixture of neutral tones. You got some browns, you've got some peaches in here, got some gorgeous metallics. The mattes are gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. But my favorite thing about this is the fact that you have those silvers and those grays that give you that versatility between warm and cool. And I really like that, especially kind of like these more, you know, cement shades. I always think of cement when I think of these, but they're really pretty. The metallics in here are like off the hook. They're just gorge. And I feel like not only is the formulation good, I feel like this color story gives me options. That's why I like this one. As impressed as I was with the e.l.f. Bite Size eyeshadows, I have not been impressed with the reformulation of the Wet n Wild. This one here is Nude Awakening. You know what's funny is I was digging through my stuff, I found my old Nude Awakening. Remember when they went from like the 3 and 5, like ones that were all in a row, to these 10 pan palettes? I have used this one a lot. And I know that they were reformulating to make sure that they were able to be vegan. I have used this one and it looks like I've really used it a lot, but I don't like it. I got it in January, I tried it, I used it several times trying to convince myself that it would actually like be a fave. It's not. It's not. I would much rather use this palette, but I've not really been impressed by Wet n Wild. I do also have like one of their 5 pan color icons. I don't live for Wet n Wild eyeshadows. I know there's a lot of other stuff that's really good from Wet n Wild. It's not these guys. If you're looking for good drugstore eyeshadows, BH Cosmetics is great, but I love the e.l.f. ones. I would skip the Wet n Wild. Colourpop is the brand that I have the most palettes from. I have 21 actual palettes, and then I have 4 of the Colourpop palettes that hold like what, 20 colors in them, and I have 4 of those full. I must have more than 100 Colourpop singles, like a ton. And I was thinking about the one that, there's a lot that I like. I like a lot of it. There's a lot that I don't like. There's a lot that I don't reach for. The one palette that I keep coming back to and I keep loving, and it's weird because not everybody likes this one. It was their first Disney collab, the designer Disney, the It's a Princess thing. I love this so much. You've got some purpley orchid tones, you've got some pinks, some real strong neutrals, and the shimmers in here are really pretty. I like the shimmers a lot. I feel like, you know, there's just a lot of really, really beautiful stuff. This is the one that I still use and I love. My favorite in here, oddly enough, is this one here called Poison Apple. I love this shade. It makes me happy. And not all Colourpop palettes make me happy. There are some that I've only used like once or twice. There is like the red palette, the main squeeze palette, the red monochromatic. I've used that twice. I've used the Honey palette twice. I have a lot that just kind of, I try it and I don't like it and it sits. But this is one that I have continued to use. I've traveled with this when we were traveling in the before times. I like this a lot, and it's definitely one that I reach for a lot in fall and in winter. Love this one a lot. Those are my favorite palettes out of all the brands where I had at least 2 or more. There's a lot of brands where I only have 1 palette from the brand, and I thought I would group them together into the larger palettes, the medium-sized palettes, and the small palettes, and talk about my faves. So these are the ones here. The Holy Grail from Violet Voss. This one is warm neutral. Are you surprised? The Day to Slay from Iconic London, another warm neutrals. And the one that I probably enjoy the most, because I feel like it's a little bit more versatile, is the one from Tarte Beauty. I don't use this one a lot on my channel anymore, but it is kind of like a workhorse for me. You can see that it has a lot more use in it. And oddly enough, I am not a pressed glitter kind of gal, but if I'm going to use a pressed glitter, I'm going to use these. They stay really well. I have gotten them in my eyes. Beware. Beware. But I love them. The only thing I don't like about this palette is this row right here, what is like the sequins row, because as I'm trying to put it on, I get a lot of glitter fallout underneath my eye. I've tried it the way Tati said, you know, where you just kind of press it in and it never stays. I end up with a lot of fallout. So I kind of skip these guys, but I use everything else. And sometimes I do use them, but I have to do a lot of maintenance throughout the day. But I like the fact that it has a big mirror. I like that we've got, you know, color stories, and you can do like a monochromatic look. You can do anything. And this is a great companion palette if you need, you know, nudes and a little bit of smoky depth, but you've got a bright pop of color. This is a great palette. So out of my larger palettes, this is the one that I like the most. Now, medium-sized palettes, this one's hard because I like all of them. But what's interesting is, despite the fact that I like all of them, I only have one from each of these brands. I was like, what does that say? So I recently picked this up. This is from BH Cosmetics. This is the one I'm wearing on my eyes today. This is the Beautiful in Barcelona palette. I was super impressed. And I keep coming back to this. I've only had this for a couple of months. I like this one a lot. Another one that's new, that's like, I've only had it for a couple of weeks, is from Odin's Eye. This is the Alva palette. I have used this so much since I got it. Like, I've really been surprised. So these are kind of running neck and neck for my faves in the medium size. I do have this from Dominique Cosmetics. This is the Celestial Thunder. I didn't think I was gonna like this palette when I got it in a BoxyCharm almost 2 years ago. I really like it. I have used it more than I thought I was going to, but this is definitely not my fave. Another one that I got in BoxyCharm that I was like, I don't know, was this one from Alamar. This is their Reina del Caribe. I actually really like this. I have not been able to get rid of it because it is really fun, especially in the summer months, like these blues in the summer months. Mwah, love. And I feel like the metallics in here, like this one, especially here, this one's called El Malecon. It's insane. And this kind of tealy aqua here called Celia. Oh, and Varadero, like they're all really good. Like, this is why I still have this palette. But I also have realized that I haven't picked up any other eyeshadows from Alamar, and I think it's because the other color stories that they have, I think they have a volume 2 of this that just really didn't reach out to me. The last one that I have, I think might be my long-term fave, and it's from Dose of Colors. I've had other Dose of Colors eyeshadow palettes that I've decluttered. I have not been able to get rid of this one. This one is the Friendcation palette by Desi and Katie. I love this, and I think particularly what I love about this are these kind of metallic-y, I don't know, there's something special about the formula in here. I don't know what it is. I mean, they have a shiftiness to them, especially this green and this kind of, it goes purple and it goes blue. This one, I think, out of all my medium-sized palettes, this one's my favorite. The other thing is, even though I don't always use like these colors here, I live in this, like, if you were to cover up these 3 shades here, I live in those shades. Those 7 there are my faves. I use them constantly. I really like this palette. I love the packaging. The mirror is great in here. Like, everything about it is great. And these really interesting special metallic shades, I feel like really make this a palette that makes me excited to use it. So out of all of my medium-sized palettes, this one. Here are all the small palettes that I have, like only one from each. I have this one from Jouer. I don't like the Jouer eyeshadow formula, so that definitely is out. I got this in a Beautylish Lucky Bag. This is a quad from Tom Ford. And although I have done some fun looks with this, some pretty looks, it's not my fave. We don't live for this. I have these 2 guys. I used to have a ton of these Smashbox. What are these? They're Cover Shot. I used to have 3 of these. I still have this one here. This one is in Soft Light. I don't know why I still have this. This is probably going to get decluttered when we're done here. This is the only one I have from Ciate London. This one's called the Pretty palette. I don't even know if they still make this. But when I got this, I liked that we had, you know, kind of like some neutrals over here. I use this shade a lot, but I was hoping that with the gray and with these kind of more purpley berry tones, it would kind of help take me out of my comfort zone. And I feel like it did for a while, but I haven't reached for this in over a year. So this is not a fave. I was super impressed with this palette from Revlon. This is Slight Flex from their So Fierce eyeshadow collection. This shade is my favorite. It's so pretty. But I feel like for a drugstore, this is better than the ones from Wet n Wild. But this is also not like super pigmented. I don't know, sometimes drugstore eyeshadows leave me a little uninspired. This is definitely not my favorite of the small eyeshadow palettes. This is a small palette that I got from Makeup Geek, and I really like this one a lot. I just don't use it as much as I thought I would. So this is probably not my fave. It comes down to 2 palettes. The Imperial Topaz from Wayne Goss which I love and I use so much. And this new one that I got from M Cosmetics. Oh, I love this. This is their Divine Skies in Magic Hour. I don't know. But what's interesting is if you look at these, you know, warm neutrals. I hope by this point in the video you're not surprised that they're both warm neutrals. I'm a warm neutrals lover, but what's interesting is you're getting so much product here. So much product. What is it? It's 16.2 grams. That's a lot. The pans are huge. Here you're only getting 9 grams, but still 9 grams for 6 shades, that's a lot. Each of these is 1.5 grams each. And what's interesting is that most eyeshadows aren't really that big. Each of these guys from Colourpop are 1 gram each. I think the ones from Tarte Beauty are just over 1 gram. You're getting 1.5 grams in this guy right here. And I like how compact it is. I cannot tell you enough how much I have loved having smaller sized eyeshadow palettes. I was worried they would get lost in my collection, but it's the big Herkin beasts I just don't reach for. I've been reaching for this guy so much, but I really do love the Wayne Goss. I don't know. It's hard to say between these two, which is a fave. Can I just say that they're equal? I don't know if that's fair to say. I've reached for this one more recently, but this is a newer addition to my collection, but I love this. So I'm just gonna leave it there. I can't choose. Don't ask me to choose a favorite child. I can't do it for you. I love them both so much with my whole heart. Thank you so much for watching today. It's interesting going through everything. And these palettes that I've shown you today are just like a small slice of my eyeshadow collection, which makes me think that it's time maybe for a declutter series. If you would be interested in seeing me declutter my makeup collection, let me know in the comments down below. But I may have to do it whether I film it for YouTube or not, just because I'm not using half of what I have and I don't want to keep stuff that I'm not using and loving anymore. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have a favorite from any of these brands I've been talking about today, what your favorite eyeshadow palette is, or if you have a most used, which one do you use the most out of everything that you've got? If you're one of those minimalists, I have one eyeshadow palette and I use it every day. Let me know about that too. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day and I will see you again soon. Bye. Dude, I didn't realize how dark my fingers got. I've been swatching like a lot. And these guys are full of sparkle. They're a little bit dark too, but I've been playing in too much makeup. I gotta go wash my hands before I like get it all on my clothes.